Live. All right. Okay, I think we're all set. Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Bob Weathers here with Angela McLeod, who's waving.
Hi.
Hi, we're both representing the Vitality Project tonight and really appreciate you taking a few minutes to join us tonight. I appreciate it on a Friday
happy to
evening.
be here.
Yeah, great to have you, Angela. Angela, the topic of our presentation tonight is in the chat section. It's how to zone in on addiction's shadow side. And as you and I were talking earlier, what we're looking at specifically is trying to expand the understanding of addictive behaviors to include something other than just addiction. Most people assume that addiction applies to alcohol and other drugs, but tend not to think about it in a more expanded frame, which would be any behavior that we engage in that ends up interfering with our lives in some significant way, and we can't seem to stop it.
Yeah.
And we're kind of unpacking it from every possible angle, but the angle tonight is specifically to look at it that I'm going to assume, and I'm going to be saying more about this in the posts upcoming, that the addictive behaviors that we engage in are primarily either to numb out or to feel high and or to connect with other people. That covers a lot of the reasons that we get involved in addictive behaviors. It can be one of those or more of those. But there tends to be a focus in our thinking about addiction, not only on addiction to substance, sometimes we'll expand it to include other behaviors like compulsive sex or gambling or something like that. We'll focus on kind of the actual engagement or the using or the drinking phase. And I wanted to include our talking about what happens after addiction today, both in terms of physical symptoms of withdrawal from whatever the substance or the behavior is, but also, especially talking with you, Angela, talking about some of the emotional or even spiritual after effects, just to kind of begin to fill out the picture. And as I shared with you earlier, we'll be doing this to look at addiction as including this latter phase. And then in the next few days, I'll be introducing what comes before the actual engaging the behavior, which oftentimes is some version of craving. And we'll be kind of unpacking craving. And what we're moving towards is an understanding of addiction, not as a single act, but as a cycle. And that for any of us that know addiction firsthand, especially in its more severe forms, and I'll speak for myself, I certainly do, it becomes more and more kind of a 24/7 phenomenon. And I don't think that most people from the outside understand that about addiction. Frankly, I think a lot of people from the inside don't understand that addiction includes this whole cycle of kind of craving, intoxication, withdrawal, craving, intoxication, withdrawal. And those are shorthand terms for a lot more. And I want to talk about that latter phase with you tonight. Maybe to talk about not only physical withdrawal symptoms, but also the emotional the emotional after effect, that part of kind of like the emotional hangover. So I'd be open to any thoughts or reflections you have on this phenomenon in whatever form. It'd be valuable to me. Thank you, Angela.
Okay. Yeah. It's a huge topic, isn't it?
Yeah, it is a big topic.
Yeah. So, well, the physical withdrawal part, after whether it's a one-time event of using, drinking, whatever the particular addictive action is often pretty intense and difficult. And so sometimes, in my own experience, sometimes just to reduce that pain, I would be compelled to drink again.
Yes.
And so there's sort of a physiological dependency issue there. That's more in a sort of a later stage, when the drinking has become more severe. Depends on, and some people have different forms of, some people do binge drinking and then not drinking for a period of time. But that's on the physical level. On the emotional level, for me, what kicks right in is, of course, shame, embarrassment, pain over what I've done, how it might be damaging my relationships. And the shame itself is so painful. Then that becomes another trigger for the using, because that's kind of the most immediate way to numb or reduce that pain. Even understanding intellectually, seeing the cycle in as it's happening, in the looping pattern that it is, and even being relatively intelligent person, and even understanding it isn't enough to stop it. And so that I know can be so hard, especially for people around me, watching or being impacted and knowing, you know, that I'm a kind person, I'm intelligent, how can I keep doing this ridiculous thing? And you can see how that then even adds more pain to the process. So and then spiritually, you know, on that level of being in active addiction and all of the pain around it, this is what I described, and the impact on relationships takes a lot of time and energy, you know. So that has often then detoured me from really being engaged with what I love to do, what I feel I'm here to do, my purpose, my sense of being a part of this greater thing that called life, you know, and how do I want to participate. And so the pain of that, you know, I keep seeing pain that is, you know, kind of keeps you in the loop. Looping pattern.
I so appreciate you're talking about it more personally, and I would just say ditto, and my experience is completely companion to yours in this, Angela, and I appreciate our both talking about it openly, because there's a lot of people out there who experience this pain that I hope it's of encouragement and support, because it's so oftentimes part of the pain, like you talked about, the shame aspect, is that it becomes a secret that we don't dare talk about, and so we're just trapped in this airtight container of pain, followed by some form of trying to medicate the pain, followed by more pain, and we're kind of trapped in this this very lonely place it can be for us. I really appreciate all the ways that you're talking about it. There's so much in what you're saying. I love your articulation of it. I think, you know, I thought I had early on when you were talking about the physical aspects, Angela, and I'd love to touch on that just a moment with you, is that when you talked about, you know, the after effects for you know, for a lot of people, they understand something about alcohol and the effect of alcohol. I think 85% of American adults drink alcohol socially in some form, and 10 to 15% become addicted to it, where it's harder to control it and so on. So it's common in our culture to drink. And so anybody that's ever had a bit too much to drink, let's just say that, understands what you're saying, is that you can feel sick, you feel physically ill, and that one of the temporary solutions to that might be to have another drink, you know, whether it's the next day or whatever like that. That kind of perpetuates it, actually, is what it does. But it's understandable. And I think when you were talking about that, I was thinking one of the misunderstandings, I've heard this directed towards me during my days of active addiction, and I imagine that you know this experience too, is I'm sorry, I just got distracted by a text here. Is people will say, well, Angela and Bob, why do you have to party so much? Or can't you just say no? And of course, we'd want to say no. There have been plenty of times I wanted to say no. But calling it a party when you're trying to stave off getting physically ill feels like a little bit of a misnomer to me, actually a big misnomer. And I work with people in severe addiction, coming out of severe addictions with things like substances like heroin or fentanyl or methamphetamine. And I don't think I've ever heard any one of them say that they're partying when they're they're in the addictive cycle of, let's say, heroin addiction. They're literally trying to stave off the worst physical symptoms imaginable. And it's not to make an excuse for the addiction, but it's to understand it. And I think it's implied in all that you said, Angela, is that can we come to a place of curiosity and understanding about our own experiences in addiction? Can we extend that same curiosity to loved ones? You know, we have I'm going to put this little banner up here. We have a workshop tomorrow, and the whole essence of the workshop here will be, it's the first part of a two-part workshop, but the first part, I want to help as many people as have open minds to understand the biology of addiction, what's going on, how that affects the addicted individual from the inside. And I'm going to try to cast as broad a net as I can, Angela, to try to get people to engage with whatever addictive behaviors we have. And some may be uncomfortable with it. I'm not going to require anybody to share what they're thinking of, but is there a way that we can think about any kind of self-destructive or self-defeating behavior, whether it's overeating or undereating or overspending or overworking or the things that we do? Almost all of us have something like that. And I think almost all of us can relate to what you said, which is the incredible frustration, exasperation that comes knowing that you're doing something that's not serving you or your relationships. You can't stop it. And when you engage in it, you feel lousy about yourself. So I'm really hoping, so tomorrow's workshop will be addressing more of the body and the brain aspects of addiction. The follow-up, which will be in exactly a month, is going to be addressing what you've brought up, which is the shame and stigma. And it's not just talking about shame and stigma, it's talking about what can we do to reduce and manage this. And so I couldn't get all of this into one workshop, so it requires two, and they go hand in hand. So one is to understand at a biological level what addiction is, how it affects our bodies and brains, and of course how that affects relationships. And then the second wave will be to do a deep dive into how shame does exactly what you said. It feeds right into the addictive cycle, and then we're trapped. And so is there a way for us to be freed enough so from shame so that we can actually be responsible in tackling our addiction? And I think that shame is the major roadblock, as I understand it psychologically, to being able to stick with recovery, because it sends us right back into hiding. It sends us right back into self-medication.
And that's fabulous. I'm really excited about the workshop tomorrow. I just, something else just popped into my mind.
Sure.
Around pain, the physical pain, the pain of withdrawal, like when we're dealing with that part of the addictive cycle. For me, in my experience, getting sober and going through that initial phase was one piece, but then a lot of anxiety and depression, very severe, came up for me. And that was also part of what would have in the past would lead me back to self-medicating, because I couldn't find ways to deal with that. So there can be layers of the kinds of pain around this. So if a person who doesn't deal with addiction themselves might look at somebody, say they get sober and they kind of make it through that initial phase, the physical, the brain chemistry part, there can also be other types of brain chemistry issues that take longer to deal with, and also put us at risk for relapsing again. And some people don't really even recognize that or understand that.
It's really good. Angela, tomorrow, I know that you're coming to the workshop. I'm going to be introducing in the latter half of the workshop a conversation about PAWS, about post-acute withdrawal syndrome. And I'll be talking about some of the features of it, especially as those manifest in relationships, family relationships. I want to invite you, I'm really sincere about this. I want to invite you to remind me of this or bring this back to bear, because I haven't touched on this. It's highly relevant. It's implied in some ways in PAWS, but I'm really focusing on just the after effects of the brain's kind of resetting after, especially after chronic addictive behaviors. And what I'm not including in that, I think it's what you're saying is really important, is oftentimes what set the stage for our addictions. Whether it was my anxiety or my depression, maybe I had attention deficit, trauma, PTSD, all of that. I'd really invite you to do that. You know that Jason will be sitting right beside me and he'll be moderating. He'll be fielding questions. But when yours comes through around this, it'd be really useful to talk about that. It also pertains to what I'll be introducing these next days in our posts. I'm going to be looking at the phenomenon of craving in terms of an antecedent to intoxication, let's say. I want to look at craving, and again, it's well taken what you're saying, is that you and I know this personally, as we both know it clinically, is that my depression or my anxiety can itself become so paired with an addictive antidote that as soon as I begin to feel depressed, as soon as I begin to feel anxious, it's like an unconscious, almost like a knee-jerk reflex. I want relief through my alcohol, or through my eating, or through my working, or through whatever the addictive behavior might be. And so I think it pertains to that end as well. I really appreciate you bringing that up. There, it's interesting, Angela. I've gone through my notes. I've given so many presentations over the last decade. There's so much material, and I'm grateful for all of the material. It's required a very kind of painful splicing out of things just to try to stay with a central nugget. I'll be using a PowerPoint tomorrow, and I've got it whittled down to about 50 PowerPoint slides from about 1,000, and so it's. I'll be missing things tomorrow. This is an important one that I don't want to miss, and it's not in my slides. It just feels really important. And I appreciate you bringing it up in the sense of, is it possible for those of us that have loved ones that are really struggling with severe addiction? And it's, I'll talk about the prevalence tomorrow. I'll wait till tomorrow for that. Is it possible for us to hold in our minds some empathy for the suffering, in addition to the addictive behavior, the psychological, the spiritual suffering that may be going on that is informed by and also sets up the addiction.
Yeah, exactly.
So if it's a mood disorder, an anxiety disorder, or whatever, job loss, divorce, I mean, just all the things. Can we begin to see addiction more three-dimensionally? You know, which would be to say, can we begin to see it with heart? And I know, and you know, that addiction tends to close that down because people move quickly to anger and judgment. And these next two workshops, tomorrow's workshop sets up the second one, which is really talking about, is there a way that we can move through the tendency to shame and blame somebody, even if it's ourselves, to compassion? And actually, it sets up a third workshop, which I've already working on that one too, in September, which will be on forgiveness and self-compassion. Is there a way we can do that? So I think you know me well enough to know how this travels, but these workshops are lined up in a way, they're really intentional, and since they build on one another. And I feel like tomorrow is kind of setting the foundation, and we'll be talking about addiction tomorrow, including talking about this addictive cycle. Your contributions tomorrow will help make it, will help fill it out. So I really invite you. You've been my companion in arms for years in so many different venues, and I so value your wisdom and your vulnerability, Angela. Really, very much appreciate it.
Well, it's an honor and it's a joy to work with you on these things.
I think we're going to wrap it up for today. I want to thank you. Thank you for your kind comments. Everybody that hasn't signed up, we've been flashing the banner. Please do that. You can do that tonight. Sign up for the workshop tomorrow. It's online, completely online. There's a sign up instructions at this particular website link, and just for you to know, it's $10. It's $10 for the workshop. And Jason, who's my partner, and I are hoping that it will help to pay for the advertising. So that's what we're hoping for. And the heart of this, the whole emphasis, is to hopefully provide education that will help people to move through the anger and the bitterness and the resentment and the hatred, either whether it's towards themselves or towards people that they love, to try to find a different perspective on this. And I'm deeply committed to it. And Angela, I know you are too. Yeah, so I invite anybody to join us tomorrow. Come join Angela and me and Jason tomorrow. It'll be at 9 o'clock Pacific time, and it'll be a 2-hour workshop. And if you sign up even tonight, you'll be receiving, as you have, Angela, you'll be receiving a whole packet of information to prepare you, including some questions to kind of stimulate your thinking. There'll be links to TED Talks and other videos that you can view. And if you don't have time, you can view them after the presentation. And certainly I've extended a very kind of core bibliography of resources that I have found really useful, very much in the vein of what you and I have been, how we've been sharing tonight, Angela. So
that's wonderful. I looked at it. It's really great. I love the questions.
Received a lot of positive feedback the last few days. I think people that are coming are really appreciating that there's the resource of the seminar, the workshop itself, and then there's all of this that they can review later. And all of that will be pertaining to a series of workshops. This will be the first one. So I hope as many of you can come tonight as possible. Thanks again, Angela. I wish you a good night's rest. I'll see you in the morning. Okay. All right.
See you.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye for now.